Thank you. Then we come to our last contributor, Mr. John Matthews from the WWF. What are your reflections? If we have all these, you're the last in the row to speak, and so you also have the last word. Please.
Thanks very much. My name is John Matthews. I work with WWF. I work globally, sitting in kind of an uncomfortable position that maybe more and more of us are now finding ourselves in, between the water community and the climate change community. 2 weeks ago in South America, I sat in a high-level forum such as this with representatives of a number of Brazilian industries, multilateral groups such as the World Bank, a variety of corporations and non-governmental organizations. After a day and a half, however, 2 women from the upper Amazon came to talk to us about their experiences with climate-altered flow regimes, the effects this had had on their fishing and agriculture, and the strange responses of species and ecosystems to what was becoming an increasingly unfamiliar world. They developed many innovative local adaptation techniques and strategies, and they had organized a really very moving network of communities to share these lessons more broadly across the region. One of the women asked if the central government had a useful role for them and said, "Yes, but they must also learn from us. We are living adaptation right now." The minister was in the room. He was silent, his scientists and engineers somewhat unfocused from practice, unconcerned with bottom-up and lateral approaches, mostly focused on top-down. Currently, climate adaptation expertise exists as a scattered constellation of individuals within larger communities of practice. Our challenge right now is how to consolidate these lessons rapidly without exacerbating other issues. Speaking on behalf of a range of organizations that have identified climate change adaptation as the work of humans for generations to come, I think the NGO community really is struggling, but also sometimes succeeding with adaptation across borders, within policies and policy development, and across a wide range of local to global spatial scales. I've come here to say to the ministers that right now the UNFCCC and NAPA processes are not in the mainstream of adaptation practice. Indeed, the UNFCCC currently risks irrelevance as a source of guidance, influence, and utility on practical adaptation. To paraphrase Yeats, the center is not holding, even as a consensus emerges in the NGO, civil society, and resource management communities that climate adaptation for humans must be grounded in climate-sustainable management of freshwater and terrestrial ecosystems. Yes, climate mitigation is critical to slow the rate of climate change, and we need a robust new international framework immediately to reduce the rate of greenhouse gas emissions that particularly includes the United States, my home country. Yes, it is critical that we also develop an adaptation fund that can transfer sufficient new additional resources from the developed world to vulnerable communities across the planet. And these transfers must be significant and begin very quickly. But as an issue, adaptation finance alone is a leaf that has become strangely disconnected from the growing tree of adaptation practice and policy. We fear that the limited definition of adaptation in UNFCCC processes will fall to the ground, discarded by the people who need sound advice and standards on managing shifting ecosystems and ecosystem services. The Danish government's sponsorship of the Nairobi Statement on Land and Water Management for Adaptation shows the way we must be moving at international and multilateral levels. This April 2009 statement values sustainable development, the resilience of ecosystems, livelihoods, and economies, good governance and implementation, information sharing, and really what I think is critically important, a far more holistic view of economics and finance that begins to view all development aid as a tool enabling ecosystem-based adaptation. The NGO and civil society communities firmly believe in the importance of water as a unifying theme that can inspire and motivate the community of nations to move quickly to implement climate-resilient policy and land and water management. I applaud the efforts of the Global Public Policy Network on Water Management, GPPN, to take these issues into the climate change negotiations and get them onto the agenda for COP15. WWF considers GPPN to be a key partner in this process. This positive understanding, a positive initiative, has been building relationships with negotiators to increase understanding about ecosystem-based adaptation generally among Copenhagen negotiators, as well as building broad commitment for holistic adaptation policies at the highest political levels. We need to send a strong message to negotiators that without a focus on land and water management in relation to adaptation, the resulting mechanisms from COP15 may not be useful to the water community, or to those societies, species, and ecosystems that are so exposed to negative impacts from climate change. While the international climate change community needs to listen to the water community, WWF also believes that the water community must adjust our language and engagement with policymakers so that they understand that we are not simply a sector. Water is what we are made of. Water crosses political, social, and even gender divides. Water links ecosystems to humans, and humans have been actively managing those ecosystems, those aquatic ecosystems, in some cases for many millennia. And while all of us in the water community know that there are many challenges to managing water beyond climate change, we've also come to understand more or less three basic concepts. First, in many cases, our political and regulatory institutions are interacting synergistically with climate change to exacerbate existing development and conservation problems. The current term of art is that we have engineered our policies and institutions under an assumption of climate stationarity, rather than facilitating dynamic and flexible responses to shifting conditions. Sometimes hydrology is much less of a problem than ideology. Second, decisions about water infrastructure that we will live with for decades are being made right now. Thus, sound and holistic adaptation policy must be used now. Third, and finally, for the most part, we already know how to manage water wisely and sustainably in situations with high and intermediate uncertainty. Implementing current wise use practices will go far towards building resilience as we develop capacity for newly emerging tools. We need Copenhagen to hear Stockholm over and through a bridge of water. The NGO community stands ready to help. Thank you.